press record. So having to record this video because we don't have a video of Nat's 360 camera experience of walking around downtown in Wadawatomi, because the editing process came to a little bit of a halt yesterday afternoon, because it wasn't just the editing, it was a learning process.
Yeah, we've got to learn the editor. It's one thing to shoot 360, that's the easy part. You just walk downtown with it. But then you've got to make it into something, because it's filmed to everything around you. You have to just select what it actually looks at as you know, in the video.
Because it's kind of like created of multiple files.
Yeah, it's a pretty different way of doing everything. We've never edited like this before. So I literally have to learn it. It can only be done in the 360 app. So trying to learn that yesterday. I was just, I don't know, yesterday all day, I was just tired. I just felt really, really beat. So I was sort of forcing myself to do it because I wanted to get the video up today, but it meant I had to, it wasn't just going to be an easy process, I had to learn the whole thing as well. So I was just getting, I don't know, just a bit overwhelmed, I guess, and a bit frustrated with it, and just felt like a really heavy weight. So I probably shouldn't have persevered with it.
And then I probably made it worse by the time that I actually sat and watched it. I was like, oh, it's got this fisheye thing. It's making me feel a bit sick. And then I'm trying to ask questions on, okay, is it from the recording side of it, or is it from the editing side? And Nat wasn't understanding what I was asking. And then she kept repeating herself, and I was like, okay, this is not really working. And just had to say, what's the matter? And that's when you finally said, you had a bit of a headache. And I thought, well, yeah, you've been studying and you probably maybe were a bit uncomfortable on the chair that you were sitting on. But yeah, I don't know, was it that or?
I don't know. The stuff that came up last night. So I ended up having a migraine for about 7 or 8 hours, I guess. I don't know if you've had a migraine before. If you have, let us know in the comments, because they're really bad. They're so painful. So it just felt like this vice grip around my neck and all through my throat area, which of course then just made my head just pound. It was just like this pounding feeling. And then anything bright lights, noise and that sort of thing, you just become so sensitive to everything. So I sat up for a while, and then, because I felt really nauseous with it, and then I ended up going to bed, and I slept maybe, I don't know, half an hour or something, and then I woke up and it was just back again with a vengeance. So it was probably went through till about 2 o'clock this morning, and then I finally just took something for it. And down a couple of arnica tablets to try and just take the pain away so I could at least fall asleep.
But
that was the problem.
Previously, though, there's never any weight on taking something. So why were you not taking something? Because, you know, I've got a bit of a history element of, you know, trying to help when you feel one of these things coming on, of which I have, you know, no direct experience of whatsoever. But I started thinking that I was the cause in the past because I've rubbed your neck or whatever. So now I'm like super hesitant on trying to do anything to help you. But why were you holding off on taking any medications?
There's a lot coming up. So I've been doing a course by a lady called 𝗪𝗁𝗨𝗪, and she does trauma work. So it's all about diving into childhood trauma, acute trauma, or acute trauma, I guess, if you've had a traumatic event happen. So you've had an accident. So when I was 8 years old, I ran through a glass door. I've had my leg broken. I've been in a bad car accident. So there's different traumas that come up. So it can be from that. But also just the childhood trauma, and then just the stress of life on top of that. So there's sort of 3 different categories, I guess, and in this course it's going through all the different types. So the interesting one is the childhood trauma, because I don't feel like I had a really traumatic childhood. Like, mum and dad were there, they're still together. You know, dad went off to work, mum was looking after us. I've got a sister that's 7 years younger than me, and then 2 brothers after that. So I was the eldest by a long shot. So we had everything we needed. You know, there was always food on the table. We were always clothed. We always went to good schools. So in that general sense, we were always looked after. But I guess there was just that, not the emotional connection that a child needs. And because mum was so busy with everything, with all the kids, and then she was doing daycare at home and things like that. And also she wasn't 100%, I wouldn't say, mentally. So, you know, she had a lot of anxiety. They called it bad nerves back then, but it would be what we would call high anxiety and depression these days. So I can see now that there wasn't, you know, a lot of physical touch from, you know, mum. And so learning through this course, she talks a lot about the vagus nerve, which is the sort of the main, from what I can glean, the main nerve that sort of teaches you how to socialize and how to be in the world. And so you borrow that from your mum when you're very young because it's not developed as a baby. So if that's not fully conditioned and it's not regulated from your mum, and she has some sort of mental thing going on, then you're going to take on that as well. And so I can see now a lot of my behaviors and things, you know, ways of being, ways of thinking, very structured and rigid, have been coping mechanisms for that in my childhood. And so I've carried that right through until now. So doing this course has been really interesting. So you can sort of go, oh, well, my parents weren't abusive to me. They weren't physically abusive, and therefore, you know, I can't say I had childhood trauma. And it's like, no, it actually takes on different forms. And we often write off the fact that we didn't have parents that maybe were really present with you during your childhood, and that actually really does affect you later on in life. And we sort of write that off as like, well, our parents gave us everything and we were well looked after physically, but it's just that insidious undertone that lies there, and it's often can be a lot more traumatic than having an actual event that took place.
So what's all this got to do with not taking medication?
Because a lot of stuff was coming up last night. You know, I could see a lot of the things that I've been working through in this course actually come about. So there was memories and there was feelings and emotions. There was different scenes playing out. So I wanted to go through that process. I was actually trying to use Irene's process to just be really present with it and be in the body, feel where it is in the body and things like that. But of course, every time I did that, it made the headache worse. So there's this real balance between wanting to be present and go into stuff, but also, you know, really feeling the pain of that as I was going through it.
So what's the benefit of feeling the pain though? Like,
just being present with it, being present in the physical body so that it can release. So anytime that there's pain or emotions coming up, they're coming up because they want to release themselves. So oftentimes we push them all back down because we don't want to feel them. So last night it was like, no, I'm not going to do that. This is the first time I've actually been able to, in the middle of a migraine-ish type, whatever type headache it actually is, to actually go into stuff, because normally I shy away from it because it does bring on so much pain to go into it. But yeah, last night I was able to use some of her techniques, which were really good to, you know, once I became present, rather than just being in my head about it all, once I became present, it actually dissipated some of the pain a little bit, and I was able to sort of see things a lot more last night. So I didn't want to stop that process because it wanted to keep coming up. And a couple of times I said, okay, enough, like I can't take any more, my nervous system can't take any more. I don't want any more pain right now, like maybe we just end this process so I can go to sleep. I was so tired. And it just kept coming up, and I was like, okay, obviously I just have to keep going with it. So it wasn't until about 2 o'clock this morning where I just went, enough, like I'm going to take something for the headache now. And I did fall asleep maybe half an hour later, so yeah.
What was interesting was obviously I wanted to leave Nat alone and not disturb her by going into the bedroom. But we'd forgotten that the homeowners here had said, if you don't want the dogs to come into the room, you can close the door. But I didn't close the door. And one of the big guys was on the bed. And it was interesting because as I picked up my pillow and I went downstairs to go to another bedroom, I was sort of yelling out to Nat saying, just remember that, like, the dogs are there for comfort because they sense so much. So they're there for comfort. Like, yeah,
one in particular, Capone, he was with me the whole time. So even when it started and I was downstairs sitting on the lounge for a bit, sitting up because I wasn't feeling, you know, really well in the stomach, he came up to me and he was just there with me.
They're so intuitive.
So he's really connected to me right now. Like I could really feel it even today. We connected quite a few times when I walked past him and stuff. So yeah, he stayed on the bed with me nearly all night.
He came down to me at about 4 a.m. So I let him out the back. But
yeah,
I think he went back to you after
he did. Out. He came back up again. So yeah, so it was nice to have his presence there. I had to move him a couple of times from the middle of the bed so I could get a bit of space.
And it's a king size
He was getting closer and closer. We were like almost spooning at one stage. I was like, what on earth is going on here? But yeah, it was quite funny. But yeah, it was an interesting process. I think it was a very different process because I have been doing this work now. And I'm really glad I'm doing this work. I feel like I really want to. I feel like through this process and this work, it's going to make me more just myself, what feels true for me, and not having underlying programs and behaviors and ways of being that aren't really true for me. And that causes that inner conflict because you can see that it's not true for you, but you can't stop it. And so I think that's the thing with childhood trauma or trauma in general, is that you do take on these different behaviors and coping mechanisms, but they're not necessarily the right thing for you, and we just keep playing them out. So
it's like a hereditary kind of thing. And I mean, and I'm gonna put on the skeptical hat a little bit and say, well, this is just as per what Irene Lyon is saying. I mean, or is it actually studied, like this vagus nerve thing or vagus nerve thing that
it's a big thing at the moment.
Take on your mother's. However, like, I mean, how do you even study that?
I don't know how you study it, but it is scientific.
But at the moment, it's feeling true for you, right? Like,
yeah,
that's what's happening.
Oh, I can see a lot of mum's stuff that she plays out is what I've taken on as well, 100%. So
well, it'll be a big celebration when all that gets rid of, because I definitely don't want to live with your mother.
Lovely. No, I don't either. So, but yeah, I mean, no one escapes trauma of some description in their life. You know, even if you've had a fantastic childhood, you've never had an accident of any description, but you're going to get it later in life where there's stresses of life. You know, that's the other part of trauma, is just that general day-to-day stuff that keeps on going, and you keep pushing through, and then you sort of burn out, and that's where a lot of the adrenaline. Fatigue and things like that are coming in. People are starting to identify that they've got that sort of stuff. Particularly if you've done a lot of consciousness work, you get that adrenaline fatigue because you're just so into seeing your stuff, and it's actually quite fatiguing. So that's trauma in itself as well. And your body is your nervous system. It's all about your nervous system and regulating your nervous system so that you can deal with things in life rather than arcing up all the time. And then not just arcing up, it's okay if you do that, but also you keep it going. And so you keep that story going, you don't let it go. And so something happens to you and you stay angry for ages because, and I have that, it takes me a while to come back down. So this is helping that process as well, whereas you see maybe two dogs go at each other and then finally they'll sort of separate after having a real Barney with each other, and they'll shake it off. And so we see this in the wild. A lot of animals will actually shake off that stress, that extra stress, and then they regulate their nervous system by doing that. But we don't do that as humans because we've got a mind that keeps going with all the stories.
Well, I mean, not just keep going with stories. I think one of the most dangerous things is when somebody says, oh, I need to switch. I need to think positive. I need
snap
to
out of this. Change my state.
I'm not allowed to feel like this, and I don't want to be this, and all this pushing against all the time just means it's going to keep coming back and coming back and coming back and coming back.
Yeah, it's coming up for a reason rather than dealing with it. We have been taught, unfortunately, and a lot of personal development has done this too, is change the state. And it's not about that. It's about going into the actual feeling and seeing not necessarily why it's there. It's not about the story. It's about the feeling, sitting with the feeling. And if you sit with the feeling long enough, it's just trying to work its way out of your physical body, because the body is actually holding all of this trauma and these emotions and the stories and all that sort of stuff. That's why you get things like osteoporosis, like I've got right now. So a lot of osteoporosis now has been proven because of stress. So I believe that I can release a lot of this stuff and I can actually turn around this whole bone thing that's going on for me right now. So I feel that I can fully heal. And so that's the other part that's been coming up in this journey right now, is that a friend of ours wrote to us, 𝗪𝗧𝗧𝗪, and she's an intuitive. We first met her in the UK. She was part of the house sitting academy that we have, and we ended up house sitting for her. So she ended up doing readings on us, Akashic records. She did that reading, but we've kept in touch over the years, and she ended up writing because she actually saw one of our videos where I was talking about the osteoporosis, and she wrote to us and she said, I've been doing a process. She had a condition herself which she healed, which shouldn't have been healed. By all accounts,
it's a form of cancer.
It's with you for life. But she healed from it, and now she can do a whole bunch of things that most people can't do with that condition. So she said, I believe that through this process that she was going through, it was called German New Medicine, which, funnily enough, I've never heard of before. But diving into it a little bit this week, it was a really interesting process.
It's very similar to what Irene's doing with the nervous system.
It is,
as well.
but it also talks about if you have something like osteoporosis where the bone is breaking down, it's breaking down, the body's breaking it down so it can get stronger. It's going to actually renew back stronger. And so this is the thought processes now, is a lot of the stuff that happens in the body is because the body is trying to break down something to then build back stronger. So cancers, they talk a lot about cancers. In this German New Medicine. So I don't know a lot about it. This is what I'm gleaning from it, from seeing a video or two. But yeah, that what we're deeming as ailments and diseases that need to be then treated with Western medicine actually is interrupting the process of the body and what it's trying to do. And so I'm really resonating with that. I believe that I can heal fully from osteoporosis, which by all accounts I shouldn't be able to do. So it's going to be an interesting journey, but I do believe it starts with this whole underlying trauma and stress and just dealing with that, finally seeing some things that I've not looked at before. And that's why I didn't want to take medication last night, because I wanted to be in it. As painful as it was, I wanted to be with that process. And I feel like I saw lots and lots of things last night for what it really is.
So yeah, maybe to go back to that sort of idea of the positive thinking thing, I know I can get a bit blunt and forceful around that idea, but it to me is just this whole Band-Aid type of thing. So if you look at a Band-Aid as being that you're feeling a migraine coming on, so you want to take a tablet for it, rather than kind of maybe getting to the source, because
what caused it? You don't get a migraine just for nothing. You don't get any ailments just for nothing. There's something underlying it.
If you're going to, flip over to positive thinking because you want to keep your energy high and you want to, have good vibrations and only attract good vibrations to you because that's your belief system. That's just another coping mechanism as well.
Yeah.
And it generally is a good one because it's something that you can do if you can't give yourself the time to dive in deep. But I truly believe that until you dive in deep as to why things are happening, that it's just going to keep coming back and haunting you. So you're spending the rest of your life trying to switch out of the state that you're in, rather than honouring the state that you're in and going, hey, I'm just not feeling so great right now. I just need a little bit of time and space. But who is it that gives themselves time and space? Like, that's sort of another thing. So even last night, it was like, what would you like me to do? Did a couple of things, suggested a couple of things, but then I pretty much left you.
Yeah, and I think that's the hard thing with a partner. If your partner's going through a lot of pain, obviously, and a lot of physical pain particularly, it's hard not to try and rescue them. But
I learned that lesson in the past with the migraine when I tried to massage her, and it seemed to come on worse. So now I've got this fear of
I don't think it's about massaging shoulders and neck and all that sort of stuff at that stage. But when you massage my feet and my legs, that's quite relieving. So I don't know if you suffer from migraines, that you might find that. I shared that with my sister just recently, and she went, that, because she gets them too. That might be helpful to do that. So, but yeah, I think as a partner, the first thing we want to do if someone is in physical pain or emotional pain is go and rescue them. And that's probably the last thing that you should be doing. You definitely should be supporting them through that process as much as possible, but allowing that process to take place, because that's really what all of this trauma work is about, is that your nervous system is going through a process and it needs to go through a process. It's almost like when you fall over or you have something physically happen to you, your nervous system kicks in straight away. But if you don't allow it, if you don't just sit with it and allow that process to take place and the body to feel what it's feeling, like it feels embarrassed, it feels emotional, you might be really sad all of a sudden, like all these things if you've just tripped over in the street, for example. But we get up because we're embarrassed. You know, people are around us. We don't want people to see what's going on. But what that does is it doesn't allow the body to go through the trauma process it's supposed to go through. And so we shut it down. And so then that trauma stays with you all that time. And so I'm really learning now about just having that time and space to actually allow the nervous system to do what it needs to do and allow the body to release the trauma that it needs to release at the time it's happening. Because I haven't done that over the years. So, and I haven't had the tools to do that either. You know, that's the thing. I didn't learn from my parents because they didn't know how to do that. They don't know how to go through trauma or emotional stuff. We don't talk about emotional stuff at home. Like, it's always been very surface level and get on with things and all that sort of stuff. And I think a lot of people, and unfortunately Western cultures in particular, do that. And so we just don't learn from our parents how to deal with that sort of stuff, how to take on trauma on the body and to release it properly.
I just want to maybe kind of round this out because we could probably talk forever.
Ages, yeah.
But if I want to round it out a little bit I'm going to say this is appropriate for Generation X. That's all we can talk on.
Yeah.
Okay, we can only talk for the age group that we are and the parents' age group that we have. This does not, like, if you're in your teenage years or 20s, this may not be sort of as full on for you because maybe your parents have been more conscious and tuned in and maybe not carrying some extra stuff from previous generations. I just want to sort of talk specifically, a feeling is that it feels appropriate for us being Generation X, and that there's probably something else for other generations as well, but
no doubt.
Right now this feels very real for, knowing that our parents and seeing our parents and how they don't know how to cope with stress and trauma and whatever.
It's just never talked about back in those days. They never learnt, and so they never taught us. But we're sort of this sandwich generation, I guess, now, because a lot of us in this generation have really done a huge amount of work on themselves to wake up. So to take what our parents did or didn't do and then see things for what they really are. But now, yeah, I do agree that the younger generation seem to be more in touch with themselves. They're giving themselves the time to see things. And I think that's a really good thing. Like, yes, they're self-obsessed. They seem to be quite self-obsessed.
Yes.
But maybe that's not a bad thing, in some ways. If you look at it the other way, it's like, well, at least they're dealing with their stuff a little bit more. They're willing to see things and they're willing to talk to friends a lot more than probably what's happened in the past. I know my parents would never talk to their friends about different things.
Too embarrassing.
Exactly. And they're their best friends. They've been best friends since school, like 70-something years. And yet they would never talk to their friends about stuff. And I was like, why? But at least we're doing that. We're talking to our friends all the time about different things and going through stuff. And we're quite open with that. So I feel like this generation largely has done a huge amount of work on themselves and busted through so many different paradigms and different challenges and stuff to actually get to this state of being able to see things a lot more and being okay with that, giving themselves the time, letting ourselves feel things that our parents wouldn't allow themselves to feel.
So I think the key takeaway from this discussion is
don't take tablets when you have migraines. Go through your shit. No.
Well, that's an individual case. Maybe not even get a migraine to start with.
Preferably don't get one.
If you're getting them, maybe there's a reason for that anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, my key takeaway is my little aha that I had around if you can't give yourself time and space, then maybe using the coping mechanisms that you have, whether it's taking a tablet or trying to switch your state into higher energy, higher vibration, whatever you want to call it. Just acknowledge that that's what you're doing. If you're acknowledging that I can't give myself time and space right now, so I'm just going to use the old tools that I've got, that I'm used to and whatever. But maybe start to make a plan for giving yourself time and space. I think that I really want to honour the time and space we gave ourselves after me getting back from Australia, doing this crazy thing that we did for the 5 days to get out of the house, and then hopping on a plane and going over to Baja California for a 2-week house sit at Cerritos. We did nothing. We did nothing for 2 weeks.
2 weeks,
and
downtime.
It was necessary, but I think it also sort of opened up a bit of a can of worms, which, thankfully with house sitting we've been able to dive a bit more into. So anyway, we'll leave it at that, and we'll talk a little bit more about these things in future videos, no doubt. But please leave your thoughts.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to hear your thoughts about all we've spoken about here. What's your journey been like? And yeah, what's your thoughts?
Do you give yourself
this?
time and space if you feel, whether it be physical
needed.
pain, depression, stress, whatever?
Just feeling a bit off. Some days you just feel off.
100%.
Yeah, do you give yourself time and the space to go through that?
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, maybe you'll get to see a 360 video in the next
few. I'll get there.
I don't know.
Today is not the
Basically,
day. I'm not doing it today.
We're not going to
So it won't be tomorrow's video. That I can guarantee. We'll find something else to talk about tomorrow. But in the coming days, you will get a 360 video. That's worthy of watching, hopefully. All right. We'll see you tomorrow.